The whisper of doubt. The night rain tapped against the window like a quiet accusation. Emma sat at her kitchen table, half listening to the rhythmic drops, half lost in the silence between them. The city outside was alive. Horns, footsteps, laughter, but her flat on the third floor of a small building in Notting Hill felt frozen in time. Across from her lay a phone, its screen lighting up every few minutes with soft glows that made her chest tighten. Daniel had texted her earlier, working late again. Don't wait up. He always said that lately, and she always waited anyway. The smell of his cologne still lingered on her coat, hanging by the door. It was a scent she once associated with comfort. Now it made her uneasy, like a reminder of someone she no longer recognized. Emma was a 28-year-old freelance illustrator, quiet and introspective. She had built her small world around moments. Coffee in the morning sunlight, drawing late into the night, listening to the city hum below. Daniel had been her balance. Confident, talkative, endlessly ambitious. He worked in marketing, surrounded by people, laughter, constant movement. Their opposites had once fit perfectly, but lately, silence had filled the spaces between them. 0 to 5 seconds. Hook. That night, the rain never stopped, and neither did her doubts. Emma turned on her laptop, trying to distract herself with work. The project was due in 2 days, a children's book illustration about honesty and friendship. She smirked bitterly at the irony. Her pencil trembled slightly as she drew 2 smiling characters holding hands. The glow of her phone interrupted again. This time, a notification appeared, not from Daniel, but from Lucy. Lucy had been her best friend since university. They shared everything: laughter, secrets, heartbreaks. Lucy was bold, charismatic, the kind of woman who could turn a quiet room into a stage. The message read, "Hey love, haven't seen you all week. You okay?" Emma started typing a reply, then stopped. Her thumbs hovered above the keyboard. Why had Lucy suddenly gone quiet too, lately? The last time they met for coffee, she had seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly, her smile a little too forced. Emma shook the thought away. "You're being paranoid," she whispered to herself. But her reflection in the dark window didn't look convinced. Later that night, Daniel came home. His hair was damp, his tie loosened. He smelled faintly of rain and something floral, not her perfume. "Hey," he said softly, leaning down to kiss her. His lips brushed her forehead, not her mouth. "You're still up?" "I couldn't sleep," she replied. He smiled, the same polite smile he gave to strangers. "You worry too much, Em." When he went to the shower, Emma looked at his phone left on the counter. The screen lit up. A message. Just one word. Tomorrow. The sender's name was hidden by a single initial, L. Her heart froze. Her mind tried to reason, to invent stories. L could mean anyone: Liam, Laura, Luke, but deep down, something inside her already knew. She turned off the light and lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling. The sound of his breathing next to her felt foreign. The next morning, sunlight crept through half-drawn curtains. Daniel had already left for work. The flat was quiet again, too quiet. Emma poured coffee, her hands trembling slightly. She picked up her sketchbook and began to draw. Anything to stop thinking. But every line she drew seemed to twist into something else. A pair of eyes watching, 2 figures walking away, a phone lighting up in the dark. The rain had stopped, but the unease hadn't. That afternoon, Lucy called. "Hey, babe." Lucy's voice came through bright and cheerful. "We should grab lunch tomorrow, yeah?" Emma hesitated. "Sure, where?" "Same cafe near Hyde Park. Around 1. Emma agreed, though part of her chest tightened. She wanted to believe nothing was wrong. She wanted to believe the warmth in Lucy's tone was real. But when the call ended, she noticed something on Daniel's phone bill she had found while paying the internet. A number repeating again and again. A number ending in -2734. She knew that number. It was Lucy's. That night, Emma sat alone again, the city lights blinking outside like restless eyes. She felt as though she stood at the edge of something dark and inevitable, a truth waiting just beyond reach. She whispered to herself, "If I look, I'll find it. If I find it, I'll break." But the truth, she knew, always found its way out. And tomorrow, at lunch, she would start to look. The next day arrived with deceptive calm. London's sky was pale, brushed with soft clouds that made the city look innocent. The kind of day when lovers walked hand in hand through the park and the world seemed, for a fleeting moment, gentle. Emma stood in front of her mirror, trying on a scarf she hadn't worn in years. Navy blue, slightly faded at the edges. She didn't know why she picked it. Maybe she wanted to feel like herself again. The version of Emma that believed in people. Her reflection looked fragile. The dark circles beneath her eyes betrayed another sleepless night. Still, she painted a quiet smile on her lips. At 12:55, she arrived at the cafe near Hyde Park. It was small and familiar. White tables, ivy along the window frames, the faint aroma of roasted coffee and cinnamon. She had met Lucy here dozens of times before. But today, the air felt heavier. Lucy arrived a few minutes later, in her usual rush of energy. Her red hair caught the light, and her perfume filled the air, floral, sharp, recognizable. Too recognizable. It was the same scent Daniel had worn home last night. "Emma," Lucy said brightly, wrapping her in a quick hug. "God, I've missed you." Emma forced a smile. "Me too." They sat down. The waiter came, and Lucy ordered an iced latte with almond milk, Daniel's favorite drink. Emma's pulse quickened, but she kept her tone steady. "So," Lucy began, "how's work? Still drawing those adorable kids' books?" "Yeah," Emma said, stirring her coffee slowly. "Deadlines, sleepless nights, you know the usual." Lucy laughed, flipping her hair. "That's you. Always chasing perfection." Emma studied her face. Every gesture, every blink, every smile, searching for cracks. But Lucy looked the same as always. Warm, confident, effortlessly beautiful. The kind of woman people trusted. Still, Emma noticed the faint tremor in her hand when she reached for her glass. 0 to 5 seconds, hook. It was supposed to be just coffee. But sometimes, a single glance tells you everything you were never meant to see. When the drinks arrived, Lucy's phone buzzed on the table. A message flashed briefly before she locked it. Emma caught only a glimpse. Daniel Redhart. Her world tilted. Her chest went cold, her hands numb. For a heartbeat, the cafe around her disappeared. No voices, no music, just that name glowing in her mind. Daniel. A heart emoji. On Lucy's phone. Lucy must have seen her expression because she laughed nervously. "Oh, that's not what it looks like." Emma said nothing. Lucy continued, He was asking about your birthday, planning something. You know how he is." But the way she looked away told the truth. Emma's voice came out small. "Lucy, please don't lie to me." Lucy froze, her smile fading. "Emma, how long?" Emma whispered. Her friend's eyes glistened. For a second, she looked like she might cry or confess. But instead, she smiled again, softer this time, almost pitying. "You're overthinking," she said quietly. "You always do." They finished lunch in silence. Emma barely touched her food. She could feel the lie sitting between them like a ghost neither dared to acknowledge. When Lucy left first, Emma stayed behind, watching her walk down the street. Her heels clicked rhythmically against the pavement, a sound that felt like betrayal. Emma's hand trembled as she reached for her phone. She opened Daniel's chat. "Emma, are you still working late tonight?" Daniel. "Yeah, probably. Don't wait up, okay?" Her stomach twisted. The same lie again. She turned off her phone and walked through Hyde Park, the autumn air cool against her skin. The trees rustled softly, golden leaves drifting down like tired confessions. She sat on a bench near the pond, staring at the rippling water. A group of children were feeding ducks nearby. Their laughter floated through the air, innocent, unknowing. Emma wanted to cry, but the tears didn't come. Instead, she felt numb. That night, she came home early, pretending not to care. Daniel arrived past midnight. "Sorry," he said, breathless. "Long meeting." She looked at him. His hair was slightly tousled. His shirt smelled faintly of Lucy's perfume again. Emma smiled faintly. "It's fine." Daniel frowned. "You sure?" She nodded. "Yeah." just tired. He leaned down to kiss her goodnight, and she turned her face slightly so his lips brushed her cheek. As soon as he fell asleep, she sat up in the dark, staring at his phone charging on the nightstand. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. Her reflection in the black screen stared back at her, pale, haunted. She whispered, "I just need to know." When she unlocked the phone, the messages were there. Dozens of them. L. Miss you already. D. Tomorrow. Same place. L. Can't wait. Her breath caught. Her body went rigid. And in that moment, the world she had built, the love she had trusted, shattered. She closed the phone, tears finally falling. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears like thunder. But even in her pain, one thought rose clear through the chaos. She wouldn't let him see her break. Tomorrow, she would act as if nothing had changed. Tomorrow, she would start a plan. Because sometimes the quietest revenge is knowing the truth and pretending you don't. The morning light in London was cruelly honest. It poured through the curtains and painted everything in soft gray, exposing the smallest details. The mess of clothes on the chair, the lipstick stain on the mug, the faint mark of tears on Emma's pillow. Daniel was still asleep beside her. His arm rested lazily across the bed, his breathing calm, peaceful, as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't lied. Emma lay perfectly still, her body cold against the sheets. Her eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, where a shadow flickered every time a car passed by outside. She didn't move for a long time, because moving meant acknowledging the truth. They say the hardest part isn't the betrayal, it's pretending you don't know. By the time Daniel woke up, Emma was already in the kitchen, making breakfast. The smell of coffee filled the flat, covering the silence that sat heavy between them. He walked in, yawning. "You're up early." "Yeah," she said softly. "Couldn't sleep." He smiled faintly, unaware of the storm behind her calm tone. "You worry too much." Emma slid a plate across the table, toast, eggs, and a slice of fruit. Her movements were steady, precise. Maybe, as he ate, she studied him like a stranger. The curve of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the way he looked down when he lied. When his phone buzzed, he reached for it quickly, too quickly. He turned the screen away from her, typing fast. Emma's voice was soft. "Who's that?" He didn't look up. "Just work." "Work," she repeated. "Right." He glanced at her. "You don't trust me anymore, do you?" She forced a gentle smile. "Should I?" Daniel hesitated. "Of course. You're imagining things again, Em." Again. The word stung. He had said it before, back when she caught him lying about that business trip, and she had believed him. Never again. When he left for the office, Emma went to the bathroom. She locked the door, turned on the tap, and splashed cold water on her face. Her reflection stared back from the mirror. Tired eyes, trembling lips, the faintest trace of anger. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was clarity. She whispered to the mirror, "You deserve better." For the first time in days, her voice didn't shake. That afternoon, she went to the small art studio she rented near Camden. It had always been her sanctuary, a room filled with sketches, half-finished paintings, and light pouring through tall windows. But even here, Daniel's ghost followed her. She saw his face in the strokes of color, heard his voice in the echo of the empty room. She tried to draw, but the lines came out shaky. Frustration rose in her chest. Finally, she threw the pencil across the table and let out a trembling laugh. "God, I'm pathetic." That's when her phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. "You don't know me, but you deserve to." Her stomach tightened. She hesitated, then replied, "Who is this?" The reply came seconds later. "Someone who knows what he's doing behind your back." Her hands went cold. "Ooh," she typed. "Meet me at the Clock Cafe on Baker Street. 4 p.m. Bring your phone." She stared at the message. Her first thought was that it had to be a mistake or a trap. But curiosity and anger outweighed fear. At 3:50, she was sitting in the cafe, heart pounding. The place was nearly empty. Soft jazz playing, the clinking of cups, a faint smell of cinnamon. A woman in her 40s approached her table, carrying a small black bag. She looked tired, her eyes kind but cautious. Emma. Yes. The woman sat down. My name's Claire. I used to work with Daniel. Emma's breath caught. Used to? Claire nodded. Until I found out who he really is. The next 20 minutes felt like drowning. Claire spoke quietly but clearly, showing Emma a series of photos on her phone. Daniel and Lucy together. Restaurants. Hotels. A weekend trip to Brighton. Each photo was a knife. Emma's chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. Claire sighed. I'm sorry. I thought you should know. I couldn't keep watching. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. How long? Months, Claire said. Maybe longer. Emma stared at the screen, her tears silent. The images blurred, but the pain was sharp and real. When she finally spoke, her tone was steady. Thank you for telling me. Claire looked surprised. You're not going to confront him? Emma shook her head slowly. Not yet. She slipped her phone in her bag and stood up. He'll tell me himself. I'll make sure of it. Outside, the rain had started again, soft, almost gentle. Emma walked through it without an umbrella, the cold drops mixing with her tears. In the reflection of a shop window, she saw herself, drenched, pale, but alive. And behind her, the faintest trace of a smile. Not the smile of someone broken, but of someone who had finally woken up. That night, Daniel came home late again. Emma greeted him with calm eyes and a quiet tone. How was work? He hesitated. Exhausting. Meetings all day. She smiled faintly. You must be starving. He blinked. You cooked. Of course, she said. It's the least I could do. Her voice was gentle, her hands steady as she set the table. But inside her, every movement was calculated. Every word, a step closer to truth. Because Emma knew something Daniel didn't. Tomorrow, his lies would end, and she would be the one to end them. The city lights of London shimmered through the glass windows, scattering across the floor like fragments of truth waiting to be stepped on. Emma stood in the kitchen, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the cutlery. 2 wine glasses, 2 plates, candles flickering in the middle, soft, golden light dancing across her calm but unreadable face. She wasn't nervous. Not anymore. The fear had burned itself out, leaving behind something sharper. Focus. Tonight, Daniel would tell her everything, even if he didn't mean to. The clock on the wall ticked past 8. He was late, as usual. Every secret has a time limit. Eventually, silence turns into confession. At 8:27, the door opened. Daniel stepped in, shaking off the drizzle from his coat. Hey, sorry, the traffic was insane. Emma turned, smiling softly. It's London. It always is. He blinked, surprised by her light tone. You cooked. I did. Thought we could use a quiet dinner. No phones, no work, no distractions. Sounds nice, he said, loosening his tie, walking toward her. She didn't move away when he leaned in to kiss her cheek, but her skin didn't warm under his touch. It was like kissing stone. They sat down. For a while, almost looked normal. The clinking of cutlery, small talk about weather and news, the kind of shallow conversation that once filled their nights with comfort. Except tonight, Emma was listening for cracks in his voice. So, she said softly, cutting her steak, how's Lucy these days? Daniel froze. The sound of the knife against the plate stopped mid-motion. He looked up slowly. Lucy? Emma smiled faintly. Yes, you used to talk about her all the time. Haven't heard her name in weeks. His eyes flickered. She's fine, I think. Haven't seen her much lately. Lie. Emma leaned back, pretending to think. Strange. I could swear I saw her name on your phone yesterday. Daniel laughed nervously. What? No, you must have imagined. Don't, she said gently, her tone soft but firm. Let's not do that anymore. The words hung in the air like smoke. He swallowed. Emma, what are you trying to say? That I know, she whispered. He stared at her, pale. Know what? That you've been seeing her. Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. His throat worked, searching for words. Emma, listen, it's not what you think. She tilted her head, still calm. Then tell me what I think. Silence. The city hum filled the gaps between them. The distant sound of a siren, the rain against the glass, the faint hum of electricity. Finally, Daniel spoke. It started as nothing. I swear, Just coffee, conversation. She was there when you weren't. Emma blinked, the faintest twitch at the corner of her lips. When I wasn't. I mean, when you were distant, busy, tired. Painting, she finished for him. Doing what I love. Being myself. He hesitated. It wasn't supposed to happen. But it did. He nodded, his voice breaking. I didn't mean to hurt you. Emma's eyes softened, but not with pity. With recognition. No one ever does. She stood up, walking to the window. The reflection in the glass showed both of them. Two people sitting at a table that had already turned into a battlefield. Daniel whispered, "Are you going to leave me?" She turned, meeting his gaze. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you're still lying." His hands trembled. "I told you the truth." Emma reached into her pocket, pulling out her phone. She placed it on the table and pressed play. Daniel's face drained of color. From a speaker came the faint sound of laughter, his laughter and Lucy's, recorded outside a hotel. Emma didn't look away. "Claire sent me that yesterday. She used to work with you, remember?" He said nothing. She took a deep breath. "I thought I'd scream or cry, but I didn't. I realized something." Daniel swallowed. "What?" "That you don't love me anymore." He took a step forward. "That's not true." "Then prove it." "Ow! Tell me why." He froze, because there was no answer that wouldn't destroy him. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. "I don't know. I just felt empty. I thought Lucy could fix it." Emma laughed, a quiet, almost kind laugh that scared him more than any scream. "Empty," she repeated. "So you decided to fill that emptiness with betrayal." "I made a mistake," he whispered. She walked closer until she stood right in front of him. "No, Daniel. You made a choice." He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "Emma, please." Her phone buzzed again. Another message. She didn't need to look. She already knew who it was from. "Lucy, he promised me he'd tell you tonight." Emma's eyes met Daniel's. Looks like she was waiting for an answer too. He turned pale, panic flickering across his face. "Emma, please, I can fix this." She interrupted, voice trembling now, but strong. "No, you can't fix something you've already broken twice." She turned, walking toward the door. Daniel's voice followed her, desperate. "Where will you go?" She paused, hand on the doorknob. "Home." He frowned. "This is your home." She looked back, eyes filled with something he hadn't seen in years, freedom. "No, Daniel. This was just your apartment. I lost my home the day you stopped being honest." And she left. Outside, London's rain welcomed her again. It didn't sting this time. It washed. She walked through the narrow streets of Camden, her reflection appearing and vanishing in puddles, each step lighter than the last. When she reached the bridge, she stopped and leaned against the railing, breathing deeply. For the first time in months, she wasn't afraid of the silence. Because now she knew the truth, and the truth didn't hurt. Not anymore. It healed. The phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Lucy or Daniel. It was Claire. "You did the right thing. Don't look back." Emma smiled faintly and typed a reply. "I won't." She turned her phone off, slipped it into her coat, and kept walking. The city lights blurred behind her, glowing softly like quiet forgiveness. That night, Daniel sat alone at the dinner table. The food was cold, the wine untouched. He stared at the empty chair across from him, and for the first time, the silence was unbearable. He picked up his phone and typed, "I'm sorry," but he never sent it. Because he knew, some messages arrived too late. The train hummed softly beneath her feet, a low rhythm that matched the pulse in her chest. Emma sat by the window, her suitcase tucked beside her, watching the gray morning dissolve into countryside greens. London was behind her, the rain, the silence, the apartment that used to hold her laughter. Ahead of her, Barcelona, not for escape, for rediscovery. She had an exhibition there, her first solo art show in years. When the gallery reached out, she almost declined. But then she realized something. She had nothing left to lose, and everything to rebuild. The sunlight in Barcelona felt different, softer, more forgiving. When she stepped out of the taxi and stood before the small art studio near Elborn, she closed her eyes for a moment and let the warmth wash over her skin. Inside, the walls smelled of paint, wood, and quiet possibilities. Her canvases, the ones she'd painted during her sleepless months, leaned against the walls. Abstract, raw, filled with anger and tenderness. The gallery owner, Isabella Ruiz, a woman with deep brown eyes and silver hair, approached her with a smile. "Senora Collins, you made it." "Emma," she corrected softly. "Please, just Emma." Isabella nodded. "Then welcome to your rebirth." For days, Emma worked silently in the gallery. She arranged, adjusted, repainted. Each brushstroke was a confession, not of pain, but of survival. There was one painting she kept covered under a white sheet. The largest one, the one she painted the night she left Daniel. She hadn't looked at it since. Every night, she stayed in her small rented apartment overlooking the narrow streets of the Gothic Quarter. She'd sit on the balcony with a cup of tea, listening to the city's heartbeat, laughter from bars below, guitars from street performers, the faint hum of strangers living without fear. Slowly, she began to breathe again. One afternoon, while hanging the last piece, Isabella called out from the doorway. "Emma, someone here to see you." She turned. A man stood there, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. His name was Adrian, a journalist from a local arts magazine. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, smiling, voice low and calm. "Not at all," she replied, wiping her hands on her apron. "You must be here about the feature." He nodded. "Yes, but honestly, I've been looking forward to meeting the woman behind these paintings. They feel honest." Emma chuckled. "Honesty is expensive. It cost me a lot." Adrian tilted his head. "Worth it." She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Ask me after the exhibition." He grinned. "Fair enough." That evening, they walked through the streets after her last interview. Barcelona was glowing, lanterns swaying gently, musicians filling the air with soft jazz. Adrian spoke little, but he listened deeply, and that alone was enough. They stopped by the sea, where the moonlight touched the waves. "You paint heartbreak like it's sacred," he said quietly. Emma turned toward him, surprised. He continued, "Most people hide from pain. You turn it into light." She looked down at her hands, the same hands that once trembled while holding a phone full of betrayal. Now they were steady. "I guess that's what artists do," she whispered. "We turn what breaks us into something that speaks." Adrian nodded. "And maybe that's why people need your work." For the first time in a long while, she didn't deflect the compliment. She simply smiled and said, "Thank you." The night before the exhibition, Emma couldn't sleep. She stood in the gallery alone, staring at the covered painting, the one she had avoided for months. Her fingers hesitated on the edge of the sheet. Then, with a slow breath, she pulled it away. The painting was raw, chaotic, splashes of red, streaks of gray, a broken silhouette standing against a window of rain. It was her. It was that night. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't from pain. It was release. She whispered into the empty room, "I forgive you, Daniel. Not for you, for me." And for the first time, she meant it. The exhibition, Fragments of Silence. The next evening, the gallery filled with people. Art critics, journalists, locals. The air buzzed with soft conversation and curiosity. Emma stood quietly near the back, wearing a simple black dress, watching people stop before her paintings. Some looked confused. Some looked moved. A few cried. Adrian approached her with 2 glasses of wine. "It's a success," he said. "I don't know," she murmured. "I didn't paint to impress. I painted to survive." He smiled. "Then you've already succeeded." Before she could reply, a familiar voice echoed softly from behind. "Emma." Her heart froze. She turned. Daniel stood near the entrance, rain on his coat, eyes full of ghosts. The world fell silent. "Daniel," she whispered, disbelief heavy in her voice. "What are you doing here?" He took a hesitant step forward. "I had to see you." Adrian looked at her, uncertain, then gently stepped back, giving her space. Daniel's voice was rough. "I read about your show. I didn't think you'd actually come to Barcelona." "I live here now," she said simply. He nodded slowly, gaze flicking toward her paintings. "They're powerful." She crossed her arms. "They're truth." He winced. "I deserve that." Deserve has nothing to do with it. I painted what I felt. Daniel swallowed. I came to say I'm sorry. For everything. For losing us. Emma looked at him for a long moment. The pain was still there, somewhere deep, but it no longer defined her. You didn't lose me, she said softly. You let me go. He blinked. Is there any way to fix it? She smiled sadly. No, but you can learn from it. For a brief second, the crowd's noise faded. Just two souls standing amid color and memory. I hope you find peace, she said finally. He looked at her, eyes shining. I think you already have. And then, without another word, he turned and left. Adrian returned, quiet but steady. Are you okay? Emma nodded, eyes still on the door. Yes, I think I finally said goodbye. He smiled softly. Then tonight's not just your exhibition. It's your freedom. She looked around at her paintings, the people moved by them, the sound of music, laughter, and new beginnings. Yes, she whispered. It is. Later that night, she and Adrian walked along the beach again. The moonlight brushed the waves with silver, and the city behind them glowed like a promise. He stopped and turned toward her. So, what's next for you? Emma smiled. I'm not sure, but for once, that doesn't scare me. Adrian took a deep breath. Would it be too forward if I said I hope I'll be part of it? She laughed softly. Maybe, but maybe I want that too. They stood there, two silhouettes under a quiet sky, the sound of the sea carrying their unspoken words. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of salt and jasmine. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the Mediterranean night. In the distance, church bells rang, soft, steady, certain. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't running from the past. She was walking toward the future. And this time, she wasn't alone. The morning light spilled through the tall windows of Emma's apartment, painting golden lines across the wooden floor. She stood barefoot by the balcony, sipping coffee, watching the city wake up beneath her. The exhibition was over, but its echoes lingered. The congratulations, the reviews, the flood of messages. Her name had begun to circulate through the art community again. Yet fame didn't fill her heart. Peace did, and the quiet realization that she no longer needed validation to feel alive. Adrian had stayed in Barcelona a little longer than planned. His editors back in Madrid had expected him to return after the exhibition, but he found reasons, or perhaps excuses, to stay. Barcelona has a lot of stories left to tell, he'd said. Emma suspected that one of those stories was hers. They spent days exploring corners of the city she had never noticed before. The tiny bookshops hidden in narrow alleys, the quiet cafes overlooking the sea, the street where an old man sold typewriters and told them each machine had once written someone's love letters. They never called what they had a relationship. They didn't have to. It was softer than that, more uncertain, but it was real. One afternoon, they drove up to Montjuic Hill, where the city stretched endlessly below them. The sea shimmered like glass under the late sunlight. Adrian parked the car and turned off the engine. You ever think about going back? He asked. To London? He nodded. Emma thought for a moment. Sometimes. Not because I miss it, but because I left too many pieces of myself there. Maybe some pieces are meant to stay, he said gently. Not everything we lose needs to be found again. She smiled faintly. You talk like a writer. I'm a journalist. It's a watered-down version, he teased. Still, you sound like someone who's seen too much. Adrian looked away toward the horizon. Maybe I have. Maybe that's why I recognize people who are still healing. Something in his tone made her pause. What happened to you, Adrian? He hesitated, then said quietly, My wife. 3 years ago. Car accident. She was driving to meet me. Emma's breath caught. I'm so sorry. He nodded, eyes distant. I stopped writing after that. Words didn't mean anything anymore. Until your story. Emma looked at him. The vulnerability behind his calm eyes, the cracks beneath his quiet strength. Sometimes pain recognizes pain before words ever do. They sat in silence for a while, the wind playing with her hair. Finally, Emma whispered, I used to believe that love was supposed to save us. And now I think it's supposed to show us who we are, even when it hurts. Adrian smiled softly. Then maybe we're both learning. Over the next weeks, they grew closer, not in a rushed, desperate way, but with gentle steps. Adrian started writing again, using Emma's story as the heart of a series on healing through art. He spent hours interviewing her, recorded her thoughts, her silences. Sometimes, when she spoke, he didn't even write, he just listened. And slowly, through his questions, she realized how much she had changed. She was no longer the woman who cried herself to sleep in a cold London flat. She was someone new, softer, braver, more forgiving. One evening, after dinner, Adrian walked her home. The air was warm, and the streets glowed with lanterns. They stopped before her door, neither wanting to say good night yet. "Can I show you something tomorrow?" he asked. "Of course. What is it?" He smiled mysteriously. "You'll see. We're something you can get paint on." The next day, he drove her outside the city to an old, half-abandoned farmhouse. Inside, sunlight streamed through cracked windows, and the smell of dust and memory filled the air. "What is this place?" Emma asked, laughing. "An old friend's studio. He let me borrow it." "For what?" Adrian pulled out 2 blank canvases. "To paint." Emma raised an eyebrow. "You paint?" He shrugged. "Not really, but maybe you can teach me." She laughed, shaking her head. "You're impossible." "I prefer unpredictable," he said with a grin. For hours, they painted side by side, or rather, Emma painted, and Adrian made a glorious mess. There were streaks of blue on his face, red on his shirt, and somehow yellow in his hair. At one point, she laughed so hard she dropped her brush. "You're a disaster." He grinned. "Art is chaos, right? It's supposed to mean something." He stepped closer, eyes playful. "Then maybe this means I'm trying." Their laughter softened into silence. They stood close, too close, the air heavy between them. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then, gently, he brushed a streak of paint from her cheek. His hand lingered. Their eyes met. The kiss was quiet, not sudden, not forced, just inevitable. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, heart racing, fingers tracing the outline of the moonlight on the sill. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't fear. It was the terrifying beauty of realizing she was alive again, that her heart still knew how to beat for someone. Weeks passed. The article Adrian wrote about her, Fragments of Silence, the art of healing, spread quickly. People reached out from around the world. Survivors of heartbreak, loss, betrayal, thanking her for turning pain into something beautiful. She cried reading them. Every message felt like a shared breath between strangers who had once been broken too. But not everyone celebrated her newfound peace. One morning, she received an envelope with no name, just a return address, London. Inside was a photograph. Daniel, with Lena, her former best friend, in a park, smiling. And beneath it, a note. "You moved on fast. So did we." Her hands trembled. For a second, the old ache returned. The sting of betrayal, the ghost she thought she'd buried. Adrian found her sitting on the balcony, holding the photo. "Who sent that?" She shook her head. "It doesn't matter." "Yes, it does." She looked up at him. "No, because this time it doesn't change anything." He sat beside her. "You really mean that?" She nodded. "I finally do." That night, she took the photo, tore it into small pieces, and let the wind carry them away over the city. Each fragment glimmered briefly in the streetlights before disappearing into the dark. And for the first time, the memory didn't hurt. It simply ended. Days turned into weeks. Emma's next project began to take shape, a collection called The Horizon Between Us. It was inspired by Adrian, by the spaces between loss and love, past and future. When she finished the first painting, Adrian came to see it. He stood in front of the canvas for a long time. It was soft, shades of gold and blue merging together, like dawn meeting the sea. "What do you see?" she asked. He smiled. "Hope." Emma's chest tightened. "That's what I wanted it to be." That evening, as they walked home through the quiet streets, Adrian stopped suddenly. "I have to go back to Madrid next week." The words hung in the air like rain about to fall. "For how long?" "I'm not sure. Maybe a few months. My editor wants me to take over a new series." Emma nodded slowly. That's great. He studied her face. You don't sound happy. I am. It's just, she paused. I finally learned to breathe again, Adrian. And I'm scared to lose that rhythm. He reached for her hand. You won't. I'm not leaving us, Emma. Just the city. She looked at him, eyes bright with emotion. Then promise me something. Anything. Come back when you've written your last line. He smiled. And when I do, I'll have a new painting waiting for you. The next morning, he left for Madrid. Emma stood at the station, watching the train pull away, the sunlight catching his silhouette through the window. She didn't cry. She smiled. Because for once, love wasn't loss. It was growth. That night, she stood on her balcony again, looking at the horizon where sea and sky met. It was the same place Daniel's shadow once haunted her dreams. But now, it was where Adrian's laughter echoed softly in her heart. Some stories end with pain. Hers had begun that way. But now it was rewriting itself, quietly, courageously, beautifully. The morning after Adrian left, Emma woke up to silence. Not the painful, suffocating silence that used to haunt her, but a quieter, emptier one. The kind that lingers after someone's laughter has left the room. The sunlight spilled across the sheets where he'd slept, a faint scent of his cologne still in the air. For a moment, she reached out unconsciously, her hand finding only the cool linen beside her. And she whispered to herself, "You knew this would come." The first week passed easily enough. Adrian called every night, short, warm conversations between deadlines and late dinners. He'd tell her about Madrid's chaos, the coffee too strong, the newsroom always buzzing. She'd laugh, tell him about her studio, her progress, her students. They made it sound easy. Two people on separate paths, somehow still walking together. But love, Emma had learned, had a way of testing the very peace it brought. By the second week, his calls became shorter. Then, less frequent. Then, messages replaced calls. Long day. Deadline. I'll call tomorrow. Can't talk tonight. Big meeting early. She understood, or tried to. Adrian had a life, a purpose, a new start. But at night, when her phone stayed silent, the shadows began whispering again. One evening, Emma sat at her easel, unable to paint. The canvas before her remained blank, accusing her with its emptiness. She picked up her phone, scrolled through their last conversation, 4 days ago. A photo he'd sent from a cafe, captioned, "Wish you were here." Her reply, "Maybe someday," had gone unread. She sighed, tossing the phone aside. The rain outside began to fall, slow, soft, familiar. And for the first time in months, loneliness felt like an old friend returning uninvited. The next day, she went to her art class earlier than usual. She wasn't teaching that morning, but the smell of turpentine and charcoal soothed her. At one of the corner easels stood Julien, a fellow artist who had shared her exhibition space once. Tall, quiet, with kind eyes and a soft French accent. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, noticing her tired face. She smiled weakly. "You could say that." "Then paint something restless," he said, handing her a brush. "It always helps." She laughed softly. "Is it your therapy?" "It's the only one I can afford." Over the following days, Julien became a constant presence. Not intrusive, just there. A coffee after class. A walk to the metro. Quiet company in a city that felt too big when Adrian wasn't on the other end of the phone. Emma didn't realize she'd started waiting for Julien's company the same way she used to wait for Adrian's calls. Not out of love, but to fill the spaces between. Then one night, as she prepared for bed, her phone buzzed. A message from Adrian. "I'll be back in 2 weeks. Can't wait to see you." Her heart lifted, briefly. Then she saw the timestamp. Sent 3 hours ago. And beneath it, another message from an unknown number. "Tell your boyfriend to stop staring. He's at our bar again." Attached was a photo. Adrian, sitting at a bar, smiling at a woman she didn't know. Emma froze. Her chest tightened, not from jealousy, but from memory. It wasn't the same as Daniel. It wasn't betrayal, not yet, but it felt like a warning. She didn't sleep that night. By dawn, she had packed her sketchbook and brushes and went to the beach. The horizon stretched endlessly, gold melting into blue. She sat there for hours, painting waves, painting distance, painting the ache of waiting. When she was done, the canvas looked nothing like the sea. It looked like absence. That evening, Julien found her sitting outside her studio. He didn't ask. He just sat beside her. After a long silence, she whispered, "How do you know when someone's drifting away?" Julien thought for a moment. When silence feels heavier than their words. Emma closed her eyes. "Then I think he's drifting." Julien's hand brushed hers lightly, a comforting gesture. "Then let him. If he returns, you'll know it's real." She smiled faintly. "You talk like someone who's been there." "I have." He looked at her, something unspoken passing between them. Not desire, but recognition. Two people who knew what it was like to lose slowly. 2 weeks later, Adrian returned. He arrived at her door with flowers and exhaustion in his eyes. "Emma," he said, smiling softly, "I missed you." She wanted to believe him. But the part of her that once believed too easily was quieter now. They sat on the couch, the silence between them stretching. Finally, she asked, "How was Madrid?" "Busy. Loud. I barely slept." "And the woman?" He blinked. "What woman?" "The one from the bar." Adrian stiffened. "You saw that. Someone sent me the photo." He sighed. "Emma, she's a colleague. We were discussing an article. At a bar." He rubbed his temples. "It was late, and we'd both just finished a deadline. Please don't make this something it's not." She looked at him, really looked. The tired lines around his eyes. The way he avoided her gaze. And she realized love could survive distance, but not doubt. Over the next days, they tried to pretend nothing had changed. Dinners, walks, laughter that sounded forced. Adrian was present, but distracted, his phone always near, his mind elsewhere. One night, Emma woke up to the soft vibration of his phone on the nightstand. A message lit up the screen. From Lydia, The Times. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait for next time, Red Heart." Her blood turned cold. She didn't need to open it. The truth was already there. She didn't scream, didn't throw anything, didn't even wake him. She just sat there, staring at the glow of the message, her heart breaking quietly again. But this time, she didn't feel weak. She felt clear. She took her sketchbook and went to the balcony. Dawn was breaking, the city below bathed in gold. She drew the horizon once more, steady lines, no shaking hands. When Adrian woke up hours later, she was gone. Only a note lay on the table. Some distances can be crossed. Others must be kept. He called her dozens of times. She didn't answer. She didn't need to, because Emma had already learned the lesson she once thought would destroy her. Love doesn't die from betrayal. It dies from silence. Weeks later, at her new exhibition in Paris, she stood before her final piece, a painting titled When the Distance Speaks. The canvas was split in two, one half vibrant and alive, the other fading into gray. Two horizons that never touched. A critic asked her, "What inspired this work?" She smiled. Silence. That night, she walked along the Seine alone. The city lights shimmered on the water like broken promises. And yet, she felt free. Because sometimes the most beautiful endings are the ones we survive alone. Paris. Early winter. The air was colder than usual that year, the kind that bit through gloves and made every breath visible. Emma wrapped her scarf tighter as she crossed Pont Neuf, the city lights reflecting off the Seine like trembling stars. It had been 6 months since she'd left Adrian. 6 months since she'd chosen silence over explanation, peace over pain. Her exhibition, When the Distance Speaks, had done better than she ever imagined. Critics called it a meditation on heartbreak and rebirth. Art collectors called it timeless. She called it closure. Yet, some nights, when the city quieted and her mind wandered, she still thought of him. Not with anger anymore, but with something gentler, harder to name. Forgiveness, maybe, or what was left after forgiveness ran out. Her apartment in Montmartre overlooked the city's rooftops, a view both lonely and beautiful. She had learned to love solitude again, to fill her own silences with music, tea, and brushstrokes. That morning, She was preparing for her next project, a commissioned mural for a small art school in the Marais. She had just dipped her brush into cobalt blue when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello. Emma. The voice stopped her cold. Adrian. Her pulse quickened, though she couldn't tell if it was shock or habit. It's been a long time, he said softly. Yes, she replied, her tone neutral. 6 months. A pause. I saw your exhibition. Oh, it was beautiful. Painful too, but beautiful. Thank you. I needed to say that. Another silence. The kind that once connected them, now only filled with things neither wanted to say. Finally, he spoke again. I'm in Paris. Her hand froze midair. Why? I was assigned here for a piece. And I guess I wanted to see you. If you'd let me. Emma closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. I don't know if that's a good idea, Adrian. I understand, but I'd like to try, even if it's just coffee. She didn't answer right away. Part of her wanted to hang up. Another part, quieter, braver, whispered, you need to face this. So she said, tomorrow. Le Consulate. Noon. And hung up. The next day, she arrived 5 minutes early. The cafe was nearly empty, sunlight streaming through frosted glass. She ordered tea and waited. When Adrian walked in, time seemed to hesitate. He looked older, tired, unshaven, his coat wrinkled from travel. But his eyes were the same. Emma. She nodded slightly. You're late. Only by 2 minutes. Still late. He smiled faintly, the way he used to when she teased him. They sat. The waiter brought his espresso, her tea. For a while, they said nothing. The air between them felt both fragile and familiar. Finally, Adrian spoke. I came to apologize. For what exactly? For all of it, he said. For the lies. For the silence. For not being brave enough to tell you I was lost. She looked at him carefully. And Lydia? He looked down. It wasn't what you think. Emma laughed quietly. That line never changes. No, I mean, he stopped himself. It started after we were already falling apart. I thought I needed someone who didn't remind me of what I'd broken. Her throat tightened. And did she fix you? He met her gaze, tired, honest. No, she just made the noise quieter. Emma looked away, her eyes stinging. For a moment, the cafe around them dissolved. All she could hear was the echo of 1,000 small heartbreaks. You know what hurts the most? She said finally. It's not that you found someone else. It's that you didn't fight for me. You just left. Like it was easier to disappear than to stay and explain. Adrian nodded slowly. You're right. It was cowardice. And I live with that every day. He took a deep breath. But I'm not here to ask for another chance. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry. Not in words, but in truth. Emma studied him for a long time. Then, quietly, she said, I forgave you months ago. His eyes widened. You did? Yes. Because holding on to anger felt like holding on to you. And I needed to let go. She sipped her tea, steady now. Forgiveness doesn't mean I want you back. It means I want peace more than I want revenge. Adrian looked down, nodding slowly. You've changed. I had to. They talked for nearly an hour after that. Not about love, not about regret, but about life. His journalism, her art, the little things they'd missed while learning to live without each other. When they finally stood to leave, Adrian reached into his pocket and placed something on the table, a small, folded note. What's this? She asked. Something I never sent. She hesitated, then opened it. It was a letter written months ago. Emma, I've tried to write this 100 times. Nothing I say can undo what I did. But please know, the silence wasn't because I stopped loving you. It was because I didn't know how to deserve you anymore. If you ever find peace, I hope it's not with me, but because of me. She folded the note carefully, her hands trembling slightly. Goodbye, Adrian, she said softly. Goodbye, Emma. And as he turned and walked away through the soft Paris snow, she didn't cry. Not because she wasn't sad, but because she was finally free. Weeks later, Emma began her mural at the art school. The wall was tall and bare, waiting for life. She started painting a horizon again, her signature now. But this one was different. 2 skies blending, no longer divided. A young student watched her work and asked, What's it called? She smiled. Echoes of forgiveness. That night, as she locked the studio, she heard a familiar voice behind her. Beautiful, isn't it? It was Julien. She turned, surprised but genuinely happy to see him. I thought you moved to Lion, she said. I did, but I'm back for a project. He looked at the mural. You've outdone yourself. Thank you. They walked together through the quiet streets. No tension, no rush. Just two people who understood silence without needing to fill it. At one point, Julien stopped and said softly, You seem lighter. Emma smiled. I'll let go of a ghost today. He nodded. Then maybe there's room for something new. She looked at him, eyes glimmering in the streetlight. Maybe. Weeks turned into months. The mural was completed, drawing attention from all over Paris. Emma's name appeared in magazines. Galleries invited her to exhibit abroad. But more importantly, she was happy. Quietly, simply, deeply happy. She and Julien saw each other often. Coffee, late night, painting sessions, laughter that came easily. There was no rush toward romance, no desperation for meaning. It was slow, natural, healing. And for once, Emma didn't fear losing it. Because she'd already learned, love that survives honesty doesn't need perfection. One spring evening, they stood together at the Seine, watching boats glide beneath the bridges. Julien turned to her. Do you ever think of him? Emma nodded slowly. Sometimes, but not in pain. More like gratitude. He taught me what not to accept. Julien smiled. Then maybe he was just the prelude. She looked at him, her heart calm, steady. Maybe we all are for someone. As the last light of day faded, Emma took out her sketchbook. She began to draw, not heartbreak this time, but healing. Julien leaned closer. What will you call it? She looked up at him, the city glowing behind them, and whispered, Beginnings. That night, when she returned home, she placed Adrian's old letter inside a box labeled Past. Then she wrote her own note, not to him, but to herself. You were not hard to love. They were just not ready to love you right. She smiled, folded it, and placed it beside the letter. Then she closed the box, gently, finally completely. Months later, at a new gallery opening in Rome, Emma's latest collection was unveiled. The title, Echoes of Forgiveness. The final painting in the series depicted two figures, one fading into the distance, one walking toward the light. When asked by a journalist what inspired it, Emma replied simply, Life, and the courage to forgive without needing an apology. The reporter smiled. And love. She thought for a moment. Love never leaves, she said softly. It just changes its form. As she left the gallery that night, the city lights shimmered across the Tiber. Somewhere behind her, music drifted through the streets. And for the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel the need to look back. Because Emma had finally learned the quiet art of peace. The kind that begins when you stop trying to rewrite the past and start painting your own future. Rome, spring. The city glowed with its usual chaos, scooters weaving between cars, laughter spilling from cafes, tourists turning every corner into a photograph. But for Emma, Rome wasn't noise. It was renewal. Her new exhibition, Echoes of Forgiveness, had just opened at a gallery near Piazza Navona. The room still hummed with after-event energy, glasses clinking, polite applause, murmurs about brushwork and emotion. Emma smiled politely at the guests, though her thoughts were miles away. Every painting in the room was a piece of her healing, a confession on canvas. But even beauty had its weight, and tonight she could feel it pressing softly on her shoulders. Julien arrived late, holding a bouquet of white lilies. He looked out of place among the critics and patrons. Simple shirt, sleeves rolled up, eyes full of warmth instead of judgment. You did it, he said. Again. Emma smiled. Barely survived the chaos. He handed her the flowers. For your peace. Peace doesn't come in bouquets, she teased. Maybe not, he said softly. But it reminds you someone believes you deserve it. Later, after the guests thinned and the gallery lights dimmed, Emma and Julien stood on the terrace overlooking the city. A gentle breeze carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine. Do you ever miss London? He asked. She hesitated. Sometimes, but not what happened there. Julian nodded. You talk about it less now. I painted instead. He smiled. That's why your art feels alive. Emma looked at him, his profile illuminated by the city lights. There was a quiet tenderness between them, the kind that didn't demand attention, just existed. Weeks passed. They began spending more time together, sketching in Trastevere, visiting hidden chapels, drinking coffee until the cafes closed. Emma hadn't called it love. Not yet. But sometimes, when Julien brushed her hair aside to look at her drawings, or when their laughter overlapped, she felt the quiet certainty of something real forming. Still, part of her stayed guarded. Healing had made her strong, but also cautious. She'd learned that love, once broken, doesn't always come back whole. One evening, Emma was invited to speak at an art symposium. It was a big step, her first major panel since Paris. Julien attended, sitting quietly in the front row. As she spoke about the art of letting go, she caught his eyes in the crowd, calm, encouraging. Her voice didn't tremble once. Afterward, people gathered around to congratulate her. Among them was a familiar face she hadn't expected to see again. Clara Duval, a curator from London who had once introduced her work to Adrian's old circle. Emma, Clara exclaimed. It's been ages. You look radiant. Emma smiled politely. Rome has that effect. I heard about your Paris show. Phenomenal. There's talk about a retrospective in London. You should come back for it. Her heart skipped slightly. London, the city that once held all her ghosts. I'll think about it, she said. You should, Clara insisted. People still talk about your old pieces, especially the horizon between us. Emma's breath caught. That painting, the one Adrian had once inspired. She nodded, smiling faintly. Maybe it's time those stories rest. Clara laughed lightly. Oh, come on. We live for the drama behind the art. Emma's smile faded slightly. Some dramas aren't worth living twice. That night, she told Julien about the offer. London, he repeated, stirring his espresso. Would you go? I don't know, she admitted. It's strange. I thought I'd buried everything there. But maybe facing it again means I've truly healed. Julien leaned back. Or maybe it's reopening a door that should stay closed. She looked at him. You sound worried. I am. Not because of him, he said softly, but because I know how much that city once took from you. She reached across the table, touching his hand. It can't take what I've already reclaimed. He smiled, but his eyes betrayed unease. Just promise you'll come back. Days later, Emma boarded a flight to London. She hadn't been there since the day she left Adrian's apartment, the day everything collapsed. The city greeted her with its gray skies and constant drizzle. Yet beneath it all, she felt something different now, not pain but power. She walked past old streets, cafes she once avoided, memories that once burned. They didn't anymore. The gallery hosting her retrospective was near the Thames, minimalist, modern, and crowded on opening night. As she moved between paintings, people stopped her to talk, to praise, to analyze. She smiled, answered, nodded. But her mind drifted when she saw him. Adrian, standing quietly by one of her canvases. He looked the same, perhaps older, more deliberate in how he carried his guilt. For a brief second, neither of them moved. Then he approached. Emma, he said softly. Adrian. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't sure either. He smiled faintly. You look alive. I am. They stood there, surrounded by whispers and flashes of cameras, two ghosts meeting in the light. I came to see your work, he said. It's incredible. You found what we both were searching for. Emma studied him. Not the man who betrayed her, but the man who once loved her clumsily. He was no longer her heartbreak. He was a story she'd finished writing. I hope you find it too, she said. I think I already did, he replied quietly. It just came too late. That night, after the event, Emma walked alone along the river. The city's lights shimmered across the water, just like Paris, just like Rome, and for the first time, they didn't remind her of loss. They reminded her of movement, of becoming. Her phone buzzed, a message from Julien. Did you make it through the ghosts? She smiled, replying. They're quieter than I remembered. Come home soon, he wrote. Ro misses you. I miss you. She stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back. I'm already on my way. When she returned, Julien met her at the airport. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. She simply walked into his arms, and everything felt simple again. That night, they sat on her terrace, the moon glowing above them. Julien spoke first. Did you find what you were looking for? Emma nodded. I didn't go to find something. I went to confirm I'd already found it. He smiled softly, and she looked at him. You were right. I don't need to rewrite the past. Julian's eyes softened. So what now? Emma leaned against him, watching the city lights below. Now, she whispered, I just live. In the following months, Emma's art took on a new life, lighter, brighter, alive with color. Her next project wasn't about heartbreak or healing, but hope. She called it The Weight of Light. When journalists asked about the title, she explained, even light has weight. It carries memory. It bends around what once was, but still finds its way forward. The final piece of the collection was a self-portrait. Not of Emma the broken or Emma the artist, but Emma the woman whole. Beside it, a single quote was written on the wall. Forgiveness isn't the end of pain. It's the beginning of peace. On the night of her final show in Rome, Julien stood beside her as people admired the work. He whispered, So, this is it, your masterpiece? Emma smiled. No, just another beginning. He looked at her for a moment. You know, I think you're the bravest person I've ever met. She laughed softly. Bravery is just fear that learned how to walk. As the lights dimmed and applause filled the gallery, Emma closed her eyes for a brief second. She didn't see London or Adrian or the pain she'd painted through. She saw the horizon, endless, radiant, free. And this time, she wasn't painting it for closure. She was painting it because she was still alive to see it. Spring melted into summer in Rome. The air was warm and heavy with jasmine, the city's rhythm slower, softer. For the first time in years, Emma's mornings felt unhurried. She woke to sunlight touching her curtains, the faint sound of street musicians below, and the simple presence of someone who didn't demand, only shared. Julien had started spending most nights at her apartment. His things, paintbrushes, books, his half-finished sketches, had quietly filled the corners of her once lonely space. Nothing had been said officially, but their lives were beginning to weave together like threads that always belonged to the same fabric. It was peace, but peace never comes without echoes. One early morning, as Emma made coffee, she noticed a white envelope under the door. The handwriting froze her mid-motion. Adrian. She stood there for a long moment, the smell of coffee fading into the air. Her first instinct was to throw it away, but curiosity, that quiet ache of unfinished stories, won. The letter was short. Emma, I wanted to thank you for not hating me forever. Seeing you in London reminded me of everything I lost and everything you became. I'm leaving England for a while. I hope the world treats you as gently as you once treated me. Hey. She read it twice. No tears came this time. Just a quiet, clean kind of sadness, the kind that doesn't hurt anymore. Julien appeared from the bedroom, hair tousled, half awake. Good morning, he murmured, noticing the letter in her hand. From him. Emma nodded. Do you want to talk about it? He asked carefully. She looked at the paper once more, then folded it. There's nothing left to say. Julien smiled faintly. Then let's not give ghosts more ink than they deserve. He took the letter, slid it into a drawer, and closed it gently. Then he kissed her forehead. The past stayed closed, just like that drawer. A few weeks later, Emma's latest collection, The Weight of Light, was selected for an international exhibition tour. The first city, New York. It was everything she had once dreamed of, and something that now terrified her. Julien found her staring at the email one evening. Her laptop open but untouched. Looks like big news, he said. It is, she whispered. They want me in New York for 6 months. He raised an eyebrow. That's incredible. Is it? She asked, unsure. Because the last time I chased an opportunity, I lost myself. Julien sat beside her. You didn't lose yourself. You just hadn't met her yet. She smiled softly. You make it sound easy. He leaned closer. Maybe it is. You go. You show the world what you've become. And I'll be right here when you come back. Her chest tightened. 6 months is a long time. He looked into her eyes. Not for people who already know where home is. There was something so simple and sincere in the way he said it that Emma felt tears prick her eyes. He wasn't trying to hold her back. He was setting her free. She cupped his face in her hands. You're too good to be real. Julien smiled. Then paint me before I disappear. 3 months later, Emma stood in a Manhattan gallery, surrounded by her art and strangers who saw her not as a woman healed from heartbreak, but as an artist at her peak. Critics wrote that her work was alive with resilience, that she painted the emotional architecture of survival. But even with success blooming around her, she missed Rome, its chaos, its coffee, and especially Julien. They video called every night. He'd show her the mess he made while cooking. She'd tease him about his crooked tie before his classes. Distance hadn't weakened them. It had clarified them. One night, he said, I booked a ticket. What? She laughed. To New York? He grinned through the screen. You think I let you have your big moment alone? Emma covered her mouth. Julien, I'll be there for your final exhibition night, he interrupted. And after that, maybe we don't go back to Rome right away. Maybe we just see the world. She felt her heart swell with something deeper than love, trust. Then it's a deal, she whispered. The gallery was filled with people, lights, and the quiet hum of admiration. At the center hung her final painting, Beginnings. It was different from anything she'd done before. Soft colors, rising light, no darkness. A woman stood on a shoreline at dawn, her reflection clear and steady in the water. When Julien arrived, she didn't even notice at first. He came up behind her, whispered, You painted yourself. Emma turned, smiling through tears. Maybe, or maybe I painted who I finally became. He took her hand. And who's that? Someone unafraid to start again. As the night ended and people began to leave, Julien led her outside. New York glittered like a dream. Yellow cabs, laughter, the smell of rain in the air. He stopped at the corner of the street where the city lights reflected in a puddle and turned to her. You know, he said, you once told me light has weight. Emma smiled. I did. He pulled something from his pocket. A small box, simple and unpretentious. Then maybe, he said softly, opening it, we should carry it together. Her breath caught. The ring wasn't extravagant. It was delicate, elegant, the kind of beauty that didn't shout. Julien continued, voice trembling, I'm not offering forever. I'm offering every day we both choose to stay. That's enough for me. Emma's eyes glistened. You don't even know what I'll say. He smiled. I know. She nodded slowly, tears rolling down her cheeks. Yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger. The crowd around them clapped, strangers, yet witnesses to a quiet miracle. Julien laughed, pulling her close. You're sure? I've never been surer, she whispered. You're my calm after every storm. Months later, they returned to Rome. Their home was small, but filled with light. The letter from Adrian remained in that same drawer, unopened since the day Julien put it away. On a warm evening, Emma stood on their balcony, painting the skyline. Julien joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you painting now? He asked. She smiled. Not the past, not the future, just this. He looked at the canvas, soft gold tones, the fading sun, two silhouettes standing together. That's enough, he whispered. It is, she said. Finally, it really is. The next morning, sunlight flooded the room. Emma placed her finished painting beside the others, signing it simply. Emma Moreau, 2025, Rome. And for the first time since everything began, she didn't wonder what came next. Because she already knew. Beginnings never end. They just keep changing shape.